Hi, I'm Michelle Onifray with International Mountain Connection. Welcome to Mountain Madness. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about the difference between rock fall and a rock slide. So let's start with rock fall. The rock can be as small as this rock here, or it can be really big, like a boulder. And let's pretend this is our cliff or the side of the mountain. And here is where the rock is normally attached. And the rock detaches from the cliff and it falls down. Rock fall. Now, if the rock or the slope is vertical or slightly less than vertical, the rock is going to free fall. That means that when it falls, it's not going to actually touch anything. And that means that the rock is falling very fast. If the slope is still steep, it's a moderate slope, but the rock cannot free fall, the rock is going to bounce down the mountain. So to bounce means that the rock flies into the air, touches the ground, and rebounds. So it bounces back into the air, touches the ground, and it keeps doing that until eventually it runs out of momentum and stops. Now, if the slope is not very steep, so it's a gentle slope, the rock is just going to roll until it no longer has the momentum to keep going. So these are three different types of movement that you will see with rock fall. And because the slope between the rock and the valley, it might change between a vertical cliff to something that's moderate to something that's a gentle slope. You can have all three types of movement with a rock fall. Now, rock fall can be one rock, it can be two rocks, or it can be several rocks. Okay? And for example, I saw rock fall this last summer. I was hiking and I heard a sound like this. And I thought, what is that? Why are rocks hitting each other? That's really bizarre. And I look up the mountain and I see this boulder that's like this size bouncing down the mountain towards me. And so I yell, rock, and then my eyes were fixed on this rock because as the rock bounces down the mountain, the trajectory can change and it can bounce toward you or away from you, but you don't know what will happen. And luckily, the rock kept the same trajectory and it bounced about 2 meters from where I was standing. So obviously, that was a very scary experience because if you are hit by a rock like that, it's game over. You do not win against the rock. I don't know if you are familiar with the Mont Blanc, but when you take the normal route from the refuge up to the top, you have to traverse a couloir. And this couloir has been nicknamed or called the couloir of death. And that's because there is a lot of rock fall every day. These boulders are falling from the top of the mountain and it comes across the path, and it's really scary and people do die. So rock fall is something that is very dangerous, and you always have to keep your eyes open to make sure that you aren't hit by a rock in areas that are not very stable. So rock fall, the most important thing to remember is that it's one rock or two rocks or several rocks. They can be small or they can be big, okay? And they're falling. But with rock slide, we have our mountain, and this entire area or section is going to break away from the mountain and slide down. And the most important thing to remember with rock slide is that this is not one rock or two rocks or several rocks. This is an entire area of the mountain that is coming down. So rock fall is obviously very dangerous, but rock slide is even more dangerous just because there are so many rocks that are falling. If there are trees in the way, the trees are completely flattened. They're knocked over. If there are houses or a village, then they can be covered in rock because there's that much rock that is falling with a rock slide. Think of a rock slide like a landslide, except with rock. And a rock slide will move more slowly because there are so many rocks, and there's that friction from the rocks as they fall. So it's not as fast as rock fall. However, it can go pretty fast, and when that happens, then it's called a rock avalanche because the rock moving or sliding down the mountain has the same look as a snow avalanche. So obviously something very dangerous, and I hope none of you have actually witnessed rock slide because it is very scary. But now you know the difference between a rock fall and a rock slide. And if you want to be notified of when the next International Mountain Connection video is released, all you have to do is click on the subscribe button and the bell. And why trust International Mountain Connection with your English training? Because Brian isn't in the kitchen, he's in the mountains. I will see you next week. Bye.